Okay, and beginning of chapter 4. Um, Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov left because he just couldn't handle it anymore. It was just too much. He left the scene, and by that point, everyone has dissipated and gone home, I guess, because it was just too much excitement. So then he left, and then he went to Sonia's house because he determined, yes, I'm going to tell Sonia everything, that it was I who killed Lizaveta. And then he was excited as he was really, adrenaline pumping and stuff as he left the scene. But then as he got to Sonia's door, he was like, he was he was nervous, he was agitated, but then he didn't know why. So so before he could chicken out, he just opened the door and walked into her room. And she was already waiting there for him, apparently. And then she was and then they had a deep talk. It basically is kind of the same thing as that scene that we took the test on, which apparently I didn't understand because I didn't get a good grade on it, that it when he first went over to her house. This is very, very similar. So they talk, and at first he tries to get her all riled up and stuff like that. And that was it. And then he asked her a question. He was like, "Well, if suddenly it all depended on your decision, whether he, Luzin, or they, the Katerina Ivanovich and the three children, should go on living, that is whether Luzin should go on living and doing wicked things, or Katerina should die. How would you decide which of them has to die, I ask you?" He's just tormenting her for no reason. I don't know why. But then he explains later on why, though. Um, hmm. She's like, "Why do you ask questions that can't be answered? Like, what's wrong with you?" And yeah. So then she asks him like, why are you being so mean to me?" He's like, "I told you yesterday that I was coming to ask for forgiveness, and almost the first thing that I've asked is to ask for forgiveness. I said that about losing and Providence for my own sake. I was asking forgiveness. That was his way of asking forgiveness. Apparently, he's not too sane up there. And that was it. And he sat down on the bed, and then he sat down, and then he put his head in his hands again. And then Sonia walked up to him, and Sonia was like, "What's going on?" He was like, um, "Remember how I told you that I was gonna tell you something about Lizaveta? Who killed Lizaveta?" He was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Yeah, who killed Lizaveta?" She was very, worked up, and she was worried because it's like, Lizaveta was her friend. And then he was like, "I must have been a great friend of his," meaning the murderer, "because I know that he did not mean to kill Lizaveta. He killed her accidentally. He meant to kill the old woman when she was alone, and he went there, and then Lizaveta came in, and he killed her too." So he basically sort of confessed to her. And then he was like, "You still can't guess who it is?" She was like, "No." And then he was like, "Take a good look." Then she realized that he killed Lizaveta. And at that moment when he said, "Take a good look," Sonia's face turned into Lizaveta's face, and Sonia acted the same way as Lizaveta did before he killed Lizaveta, meaning she got scared, and then she moved back, and she moved back, and then she was like that. That's basically how that happened over there. And then he did the same thing too, and if you want to read this, it's on page 406, is the first full paragraph right here. That's the first full paragraph. See that right there? That's it. And she's like, and then afterwards, after that whole thing passed between them, he was like, "Have you guessed?" She was like, "Good God, oh no, I figured it out, blah, blah, blah." And then she sank into the bed, and then she cried. And she looked at him, and then he was like, "Stop, Sonia, enough, don't torture me." What I don't understand is that he doesn't want her to torture him, but he was perfectly fine torturing her. Like, what, 3 minutes ago, literally? Um, and then she was like, then after all this, she hugged him and she started to cry. She was like, "What have you done? What have you done to yourself?" she said in despair, and jumping up, she flung herself on his neck, threw her arms around him, and held him tightly. She was crying. And then Raskolnikov was like, "You are a strange girl, Sonia. You kiss me and you hug me when I tell you about that. You don't think what you are doing." Then she says, "There is no one in the world who is so unhappy as you." And he started to cry. That was a feeling before that he had tried to block, which shows that he's definitely not an Ubermensch. He's just regular like everyone else. He starts to cry. And then he was like, "Then you won't leave me, Sonia." And then she said, "No, no, never, nowhere. I will follow you. I will follow you everywhere. Oh my God, oh how miserable I am. Why didn't you?" So then she's crying. Basically, that's what's going on there. And she was like, "I'll follow you to Siberia." At this, he was like, "Fuck, I wasn't planning on going to Siberia though." He didn't say that, but then that was what his gestures implied. And then he says, "Perhaps I don't want to go to Siberia yet, Sonia." Turning the page. And oh hey, yay! This is, I think, not one more video. And then, oh, it says here, in his changed tone, she seemed to hear the murderer speaking. First sentence, page 408. And then she was like, "You were hungry. You tried to, you killed that lady to provide for your mother." She was trying to look for reasons why he could have done something so heinous. And he was like, "No, Sonia." Oh, he was like, "No, Sonia." And then she was like, "Wait, the money that you gave us, was it the money that you got from killing the lady?" And then he was like, "No, no, no, don't worry yourself. That was my money. My parents gave me that." And and then he told her where he stashed the money, and she was like, "You said you did it to rob, but you took nothing?" He was like, he doesn't know why he did it. He really doesn't know why he did it. Like he honestly doesn't. And then he was like, you know, he asked her again, "You won't leave me, right?" And she's like, "No, definitely, I won't leave you." And he was like, and then he looked at her. He was like, "You're expecting an explanation from me, but I can't tell you why. Like, I definitely can't tell you why. All I know is that I came here and I poured my burdens on you, hopefully to make me feel better. But then it doesn't make me feel better." And she was like, "But aren't you suffering too?" And oh, he asked her, he was like, "And can you love such a mean wretch?" Referring to himself. And she was like, "But aren't you suffering too?" And then he cried again. And then he was like, "Sonia, I have a bad heart." That was what was going on there. And then he was like, "We're so different. I shall never forgive myself for coming." She was like, "It's a good thing that you came." And he was like, "I wanted to become a Napoleon. That's why I killed her. Do you understand now?" She was like, "No, obviously she doesn't understand. She doesn't know what he's talking about." And then he was like, this is how everything started. He was like, he asked himself a question one day. What if Napoleon, for instance, had happened to be in my place, and he had not, basically he was asking himself like, I why hold on. Okay, page 410, excuse me, the last paragraph is basically, he's theorizing on why he did that. He was like, "Well, I just wanted to be like Napoleon." Because he was wondering that if Napoleon didn't have all that he had, and to get what he wanted, he had to kill an old lady. Would he do it? Would he do it? That's basically what's going on. And he was like, he was following his Napoleon's example by murdering the old lady. And she was like, "What the hell?" And he was like, oh, and then he talked about how his mother and his sister were pretty poor and all their hopes were centered on him. And he was a student, and he he didn't want to, he didn't want he didn't want to just go on living life while his mother suffered and his sister married losing, and she suffered as well. He didn't want that. And it says, "So I resolved to gain possession of the old woman's money, and to use it for my first years without worrying my mother, to keep myself at the university and for a little while after leaving it, and to do this all on a broad, third scale, so as to build up a completely new career, entering upon a new life of independence." That's why. One of the reasons why he thinks he killed the woman. And she's like, but that's not it though. That's not the real reason. I that's not the real reason. And then he was like, I've only killed a louse, Sonia, a useless, loathsome, harmful creature. She was like, but it's a human being. He's like, I too know it wasn't a louse, meaning he knows that he killed a human being. And there are other causes for it. And then he goes into this long explanation of how he killed, like the reasons why he possibly killed the woman. And he said, imagine that I am vain, envious, malicious, base, vindictive, and perhaps a tendency to insanity. I've told you just now I could not keep myself at the university, but do you know that perhaps I might have done? My mother could have sent me. So then he's saying that, my mom could have sent me all this money. I, I could have been, I could have done without killing the old lady. And then, he's like, but I see now what I might have done. All I did, I quit my job and I just sat in my room all day and I sulked in the darkness. I didn't go out. So basically, he's implying that because he was idle for such a long time, he just started thinking of crazy things. And it says here, and I kept thinking, and I had dreams all the time, strange dreams of all sorts. Basically, he had nothing else to do. He had nothing else to do. That's why he decided to kill the old lady. And then he was like, and then he keeps talking about crap. He was like, people have all these things, but no one reaches out to grab it. I want to be the one that reaches out to grab it. It's like, it makes no sense. You just killed the lady because you were bored. And so he came to a conclusion that power is only vouchsafed to the man who dares to stoop and pick it up. There's only one thing needful. One has only to dare. Then for the first time in my life, an idea took shape in my mind, which no one had ever thought of before me. No one! That's the Ubermensch mentality talking again. Because how is he sure that no one else has thought of it? I saw it clear as daylight how strange it is that not a single person living in this mad world had the daring to go straight for it all and send it flying to the devil. I wanted to have the daring, and I killed her. I only wanted to have the daring. So he did this just to prove that he has balls. That's it. To prove that he's different from everyone else, that he's above the law, he has transcended, the laws of conscience, the laws of nature. And then he also said that it was a temptation of the devil. And he said, I know myself that it was the devil leading me. And then he said, I went into it like a wise man, and that was my destruction. I went into it like a wise man, and that was my destruction. Meaning, his Ubermensch mentality is the one that got him into this trouble. I'm going to stop here and then start over.